I want to talk next about something that happens when a person goes on a diet. Something that is very, very common that most people overlook and is the source of why most diets fail. It's going from eating too little to eating too much. It's going from starvation during the week to binging on the weekends. It's being good for a certain amount of time and then being bad for a certain amount of time. What this is it's never getting into this middle place of healthy eating in the middle, where you're eating enough calories and nutrition that you can maintain that long term. So you're always going from these two radical places here. Now, why does this happen? Why is this so typical and so common? Most of us don't realize that we have an addiction to food pleasure. We get pleasure out of eating. We're created to have that so that we automatically eat to survive. If we hated eating, well, we wouldn't survive, right? So anything that we need to do for our existence and survival, we've been hardwired to enjoy doing that. So food always gives us pleasure. Now for those folks that are overweight, there are certain foods that tend to give us an immense amount of pleasure, that we've associated a ton of pleasure with those foods, and we are addicted. We are addicted to that pleasure in our minds. So rather than thinking, okay, I want to live a new life. I want to live in a healthy body. I want to feel great. I want to have all those things. But you know what? I love white bread, and I love French toast, and I love pizza, and I love all-you-can-eat buffets, and I love whatever. We think that we don't want to give those things up, so we think if I really starve myself for a certain period of time, then I can enjoy those foods again. All right? So what we fail to do is we force ourselves into foregoing those foods, those bad foods, for a certain period of time, and then we end up eating them. Then we end up binging on them. Because anything you love, the longer you go without it, the more you want it. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. So then when you do finally eat the white bread or the pizza or the French toast or whatever it is that you really enjoy, it tastes even better. And it gives you even higher sensations of pleasure to associate with that food. So what we need to do then is we need to disassociate these massive levels of pleasure with certain foods. Now here's what happens. Before we talk about that, here's why this going from eating too little to eating too much ends up being the demise of anyone's weight loss program. When you go from eating too little, where you're starving yourself, where you're eating, some people will eat very low calories, 1,000 calories. They'll just eat maybe 4 different items for the entire week, just 4 things that they eat. They eat an apple, banana, a can of tuna, some cottage cheese in different orders, Monday through Friday, so that once they get to Saturday, then they can eat whatever they want to. So crazy things like that. So what happens is, for a while you can lose weight that way. But what happens then is when you get to that day or days that you're binging, your body then, because you're starving it before, your body goes into starvation mode, and then when it does get food, what do you think it does? It wants to store it as fat. It wants to use as much of that as storage, because it knows, hey, I was just in a starvation mode here yesterday and for a whole week. What if it happens again? Let's store all this as fat. And then you go back to your week of being good and going into starvation mode, your body's metabolism slows way down. So your metabolism slows way down, and then when you do binge, it stores it all as fat. So you end up, the scale stops moving. You don't lose any more weight. Even though you're starving yourself all week long, the binging you're doing on the weekends is causing that scale to plateau. It stops moving. So then the brain starts thinking, oh my gosh, I'm doing all this work during the week, I'm being good during the week, starving myself during the week, foregoing foods and thoughts, man, I sure wish I could do this while I'm, have my bowl of ice cream that I normally do when I'm watching TV, but I can't because I'm on a diet. Your mind starts to go, well, what for? The scale's not moving anyway. Why don't I just go back to so you end up going back to the old eating habits. And the scale wasn't moving that much anyway, but at least you could eat, ice cream during the week. And then what happens is you're not really doing the binging anymore on weekends where you're going all out. You're just kind of incorporating that back into your old habits of eating before that got you to where you are. So it's very important that we understand that this does not work, that there has to be a new way of doing it. And that new way of doing it is looking at why you're binging. Why you're binging is because you have certain foods that you just love, that you've associated a ton of pleasure to. Now, the reason why this happens is because our human brains believe that our preferences are fixed. Our brains love to develop a belief and then hold on to that belief as that's it. So we see our preferences see our preferences as who I am. We identify with those. I don't like green beans. I don't like tuna. I like French toast. I love chocolate. Oh, I love wine. So we develop all these preferences and then we begin to identify with those. And when we identify with those, it's hard for our brain, now follow me on this, it's hard for our brain to not identify with it, because then it would mean that in the past we were a liar. It wasn't true. And we never want to think that the past wasn't true. Our brain wants to think that it knows what it's talking about. It knows what it's thinking. Its thinking is correct. So if I believe that I don't like green beans, that green beans are icky, and then someone comes along and says, no, green beans are delicious, I'm going to disagree with you because I want to be right. And that's how your brain works. So you have to really understand is that this is simply your brains. It's your brain's preference. A preference is simply an association with something, of pleasure with something. Anything. If I chew my nails, and that brings me relief from my anxiety or pleasure, I'm going to start to develop the habit of biting my nails. I can bite on the top of a pen, and if that helps me to concentrate, that brings me a certain amount of pleasure, and it becomes a habit. Food. We eat ice cream. Oh, it brings us pleasure. We eat whatever it is that we like. And it brings us pleasure. Our brain then associates pleasure with that item. Pleasure with that item. Now here's what happens when you go on a diet and you're good all week long, and then you have the ice cream after not having it for 2 weeks or whatever. Guess what happens to the amount of pleasure you experience at that time? It goes through the roof. So now you have that ice cream and you're feeling immense pleasure. You're associating immense pleasure with this ice cream. You're re-associating all that pleasure, that ice cream. So then comes Monday, you gotta be good, no more ice cream until the weekend, and my gosh, it becomes harder and harder and harder because you continue to reinforce that positive pleasure association with these certain foods. Now, when do these preferences get developed? You didn't just wake up this morning and decide green beans are icky. You decided green beans were icky probably when you were 5 years old. And you decided that French toast or peanut butter or white bread or whatever it is that you love, that we all are addicted to as kids. Because as kids, we eat for taste. We don't care about nutrition. We don't care about calories as kids because we don't have that perspective on our lives. As adults now, we do. We have these goals. I want to live healthy. I want to feed my body good nutrition. I don't want to get cancer. I want to feel good about myself. But we bring those childhood preferences into our adult lives, and we continue to believe, be tricked into believing that our brain's programming preferences that occurred as kids is now who I am as an adult. And that's absolutely false, but we operate by that. So once you understand this, you don't have to now think that I don't like green beans. I don't like tuna. I'm not a fish eater. I love steaks. I'm a potato guy. I love potatoes. I love cheese. When I go to a game, I gotta have brats. I'm a brat kind of person. We identify so much of the eating with who we are. And our preferences really have nothing to do with who we are. You are whoever you want to be. You can program your brain to prefer and want whatever you want. And you do that simply by associating pleasure or pain with that certain item. Now here's how you do it. Through your thinking, by thinking, you produce emotions. So, when we're eating green beans, for example, we say, okay, I'm going to diet, I got to eat green beans, I'm going to eat green beans. Now here's the thing that happens actually is, you don't even eat green beans. You don't even try eating any of those healthy foods. Maybe you work with some coach that says, here's what you should eat. And you're like, yeah. And you get home, the moment of truth, you're in your kitchen, and instead of doing that, you just do something that you like, and you just stick with these 4 simple items, these 4 healthy items that you like. Apple, whatever, this thing, that thing. These 4 items, and that's all you eat during the week, because that's the only healthy foods you really like. Because you believe that all these other things that are healthy, you don't like. I don't like those things. So what you've got to do is to force yourself to eat those things. First of all, by understanding what I'm talking about here, to be like, that makes sense. I'm going to start making some of these new foods and doing this. And as I'm eating this, I'm not going to think, oh, this is so restrictive. This just stinks. I usually have white bread with my meals and a glass of milk. No, I'm not having my milk. This water, water tastes terrible. So if we're thinking this, the emotions we're going to feel are going to be negative, so we're going to continue to associate those negative emotions with those healthy foods that we want. So what we need to do is reverse that. We need to think about all the things that are positive about those certain items. Think about the vitamins in green beans. Think about how that fresh water is flushing all the toxins out of your body and giving you energy to succeed at work. Think about when you're eating the healthy food, how it's starving your fat cells. So your thoughts create emotions. And it can be as simple as saying out loud when you're eating the food, this is making me healthy. These foods are what I want to eat. This is how I'm going to reach my weight loss goal. By saying that out loud, for sure, it's going to elicit emotions. Saying it in your head will elicit emotions. The point I'm trying to make here is to think a thought. You say that thought in your head or out loud. You say it, you think it, and then you feel it. So say, think, and feel is how you create the emotion to start reattaching positive emotions to those healthy foods. And then the reverse. When you allow yourself to have the pizza or the white bread or the French toast or the potatoes or the steaks or whatever it is, the heavy dressings, you eat those foods, but rather than going, oh my God, I'm so glad it's Saturday, I get to have these great foods, you eat them and you think to yourself, this is something that I've had a lot of pleasure from in the past. But now you think of all the negatives. Now you think of all the negatives. You list all the negatives in your head. This food is high in calories. This food is destroying my health. This food is making me a poor role model for my kids. This food is causing my knees to hurt. This food is, continue to think about the consequences of this food that you're eating. So that you create so you kind of sober your mind up, going from, oh, this is so great, to this is a choice that I can make, but I have to balance this into my life. This can't be the goal of my life. I'm not living to eat French toast. I'm not struggling through the week so I can get to Friday and have my batter fried fish and French fries. Can we have these things in our life? And the answer is yes. We can balance all these things in our life. Healthy eating just use the 80-20% rule. This is the healthy eating. This is finding the fruits and vegetables and the lean meats and the healthy grains and eating this way. Teaching your brain to like this stuff. Teaching your brain, reprogram your brain to like this stuff. And then of course the 20% pleasure. And having this as a part of your lifestyle. You're not holding out to have the things that you enjoy later on. They come and go. But the goal really is to do this. Pleasure foods, chips, treats, all those things, pleasure foods. You want to go from loving them to you like them. Okay? You like them. Yeah, I like to have pizza. I like it. But I don't love it. I don't live for it. I don't, when I have it, feel like I'm going to, die without it. To getting to a point where eventually you're either neutral or dislike. You're either neutral or dislike. You may have some foods in your life that you want to learn to dislike. You just don't want to like to eat. You love hot dogs. I dislike hot dogs because I know they're fat bombs. And to me, that's how I stay away from certain foods. Is I create words that create thoughts that create emotions. I call brats and hot dogs fat bombs because they're just cylinders of fat. And when I say it that way, that gives me a new emotion, a new feeling towards hot dogs. So I no longer love the hot dogs. It's something that, I don't want that. I'm not sure if I want that at all. So the goal here isn't to go from loving it to neutral or hating it. You just want to take that loving that food to liking it. And that just pulls that emotions off a little bit more as you keep working towards doing this, getting it to be neutral. So that you're able to go to healthy eating, not the starving and then binging. Starving and then binging. What you'll be doing is detaching from those pleasure foods to allow yourself to eat in the correct amounts and correct things every day. And just having that 20% or so of the pleasure foods mixed into your life in a healthy way. Now we'll talk more about how to program your mind to love the healthy foods and to pull away the emotional attachments to those pleasure foods so that you can get to that point. I hope this makes sense. This is so important because so many people fall into this trap when they start a diet of really restricting themselves and then binging, and then restricting themselves and then binging. And as I said, all that leads to is a lower metabolism, your body starts to hoard the fat, the scale stops changing after a certain period of time, and then you decide after a certain period of time, what's the use? Why keep doing this? And that's why most diets fail. It's because it's a diet. It's not a new way of teaching yourself to love eating healthy. And it first starts with the understanding of your preferences are not your preferences. They're your brain's old programming, most of which came from when you were a little kid and all you cared about is eating for pleasure and for fun. Now as adults, we're eating for nutrition. We understand that eating is either hurting us or helping us in our lives, in our bodies, and what we want to accomplish. But we bring into adulthood these old associations with pleasure foods that we think are still who we are. And that's absolutely not the case. Once you understand that, then you free yourself up to be able to reprogram your brain to love anything you want to. This is Dave Erickson. Live by choice.